Behind me is my own personal new build that we are only a couple weeks away from closing on and being able to get keys. And today in this video, I'm gonna walk you through the 12 critical steps of building a brand new build from start to finish. I'm gonna walk you through what I checked, what I would change, and one thing that happened mid-build that almost made me completely walk away from this deal. Also stick around near the end. I'm gonna share my #1 insider secret to make sure your new build process goes smooth from start to finish. It is a little known fact. It will save you hours and hours of heartache and tossing and turning in the middle of the night. Hey, I'm Rich, and my family's lived in Tucson for over 150 years. And if you want to know everything there is to know about lifestyle, real estate, and new builds in Tucson and the greater Tucson area, you've come to the right place. Make sure you hit that subscribe button, tap the bell for notifications so that you don't miss an update. So as I mentioned, behind me is the new build. And wow, you know, having walked so many clients through this process in my career and having walked so many new builds, probably 500-600 between my career as a real estate appraiser, but also my career as a real estate agent. It is a completely different thing to be at this phase of your own new builds. Now, if some of you have watched my channel before, you've known that the house that I currently live in, my wife and I also built, but it was a little bit of a different process. This is a production build process, which has some critical differences, some similarities, but the other process would be a semi-custom or custom, and that is the process we went through the first time. So much different, and there's pros and cons to both sides, but in this video, I'm gonna break down the 12 most critical phases and steps that you need to be paying attention to, as well as some of the tips and tricks as I walk you through my own personal future home or soon to be home. So let's go ahead and get started and take a peek. Now, where it all starts, if you're building from the ground up, where everything starts is first, you got to figure out where you want to build your home. And that starts with the lot selection as well as the floor plan selection. So as you can see, this lot is one of many lots that were available for us to choose from. And if I can give any suggestions on how to pick a lot, first and foremost, you got to know what's important to you. For us, I can speak from what was important to us. We've got a growing family. We wanted a little bit more space in our backyard, enough room to kick a soccer ball, throw a football, put a little play set for the girls. And because of that, having a larger backyard was something that was very important to us. Also, when we analyzed and took a look at this community, something that I noticed was there was one of 5 lots that were larger, they were longer. And so this is actually one of 5 lots that when we wrote the contract, it wasn't even released yet, or one of these 5 lots had been released, which gave me the clue that they might release some of the other lots. And as far as I could see, doing all my research, looking at aerial images, talking to a lot of the builder folks in the community, I recognized that this was probably my only shot to grab a lot like this with a larger backyard, and not only that, but a bigger driveway, as you're gonna see here. So as you can see, that driveway is about twice the size of a standard driveway for most production built communities like this. This is about 20-25 feet. This driveway is about 40-42 feet. So for us, that was something that was a really critical thing to pay attention to. Now, other things you want to pay attention to are views, what's behind you, what's going to be built in the future behind you, or what's proposed. Even though there isn't something built behind you currently, doesn't necessarily mean that that will always be the case. And I'm going to show you that and talk with you about that when we get into the backyard. More on that in just a second. The other thing that you're going to want to pay attention to is the floor plan itself. This backyard and this lot actually would have more yard had we selected a different floor plan that might have been a little bit smaller. But for us, one of the selling points of buying at this community was this specific floor plan. We felt that this floor plan really embodied everything that we loved about homes that were higher in price point, yet it was about 15 to 20% less in cost. So we felt personally that it was a really, really good value in terms of the floor plan that you get and the price that you end up paying. Now, for those of you that may or may not have a whole lot of vehicles, or might be asking, why is a larger driveway that big of a deal? Really, it's just parking. I mean, part of it is parking at least. You can also tell that from the road as you drive up. You see how much more forward this house is because it has more of a standard driveway. We felt that these lots that are limited, that are these size, these length, because you have so much landscaping in the front, you can fit probably twice as many cars, and you got a little bit more distance between the street and your house, that if it was between our house and another house that was the same floor plan, but we had this lot, my experience tells me that most buyers, if they're comparing those two things for the same price, this house is going to have an advantage. So it's not necessarily that this lot is going to contribute a significant amount of money over and above another lot, but it's likely to have a little bit more desirability, and ultimately in a competitive market, that can lead to a higher price and multiple offers. Now, as we walk into the backyard, this is one of the biggest selling points of Dove Mountain. And if you've been to Dove Mountain, you know what I'm talking about. If you haven't been to Dove Mountain, you should watch some of my videos and you'll know what I'm talking about. Or maybe you have watched some of my videos, but you just haven't visited Dove Mountain. So I encourage you to do that. But I'll shoot straight with you. This is an incredible view. It is not one of the best views in the community. I would say it is a representation of, or an example of, a good view in Dove Mountain. There are lots that have better views for sure. And I would say that this is slightly above average in my opinion. There are lots in this community that have more substantial views, both in the distance that you can see, but also, I mentioned, know what's being built behind you. One of my biggest considerations was I knew that there was this tract of homes that was yet to be built, but they had developed the land behind me. Now you might be able to see just through there, you can see these dirt mounds. I paced that out. That's about 220 feet from my wall to the back of the lot of those houses. Now, yes, you'll be able to see those people and those homes in the distance, but for us personally, we thought it was far enough away. I mean, to be completely transparent, we live right in the middle of the city right now. We've got 4 foot, 4.5, 5 foot walls on either side of us. You know, when we're hanging out in our backyard, oftentimes we're waving at our neighbor if they come into their backyard. So there is very little privacy that we're used to. And for us personally, this feels like an absolute, this feels like maximum privacy for us. So, but it is one of the considerations. For some of you, you want to know that there's never ever going to be a neighbor behind you that's visible. Well, in this case, when we bought this lot, even after we move in, there probably won't be. But at some point in the near future, there will be. So that is something to pay attention to and something that we considered. Now, another thing that I wanted to mention as I close out the first part is the floor plan really matters. And for us, we happen to fall in love with this floor plan, which is called the Mint. Now, this is one of 14 floor plans that they offer. However, one of the things to consider, and part of the checks and balances that we did when we decided to build here, was it just so happened that the Mint wasn't just our favorite. It was a favorite of people buying in the neighborhood. And that really is an ideal situation, because if you are buying a floor plan that has a lot of market acceptance, meaning that there's a lot of other buyers in the community who also agree that that floor plan is the best and is very desirable, that's a great indication of demand, future demand as well. So for us, that was another really important thing, is to understand that the floor plan that we're buying, yes, we love it, but also when we resell this home in another 7 to 10 years, or at least consider doing that, we have a much higher likelihood of the highest levels of demand that can be achieved in this neighborhood, because it's very popular now, which means it's likely to be very popular when we go to sell. It's going to be one of the more popular floor plans that was available here at this community. Since we're already inside the house, now I'm going to start talking with you about the second critical thing you're going to want to pay attention to, the second phase, which is going to be selecting your structural options. Now, typically this is done in the sales office right when you are in the process of writing the contract. And what I mean by structural options is this. This sliding glass door, 12 foot in distance with a center meet slider, we have 2 panes of glass. That is a structural option, something that you modify the structure, and that's done right when you're writing the contract. They also have an option, instead of this T-island, they also have an option to ditch the T and make a waterfall edge on either side. Now, for those of you who might be familiar with this community, this T-island is actually standard, and it was one of the things that we absolutely fell in love with because it is so unique. So I don't know why anyone would want to ditch the T-island, especially since it's already included, but to each their own. For some people that may be the case. I have yet to see anyone who's done that yet, so we will see if that is something that happens. Another thing would be like these tray ceilings. They call these coffered inserts. That would be a structural option. This is a structural option. This whole study is in place of what would have been a 4-car garage. So they delete a garage car bay and they build out this study. As you can see here, I'll go into the garage. So instead of this 3-car orientation, so it's a standard 2-car garage with a 1-car garage tandem, that would actually be part of the garage as well. But as a structural option, we decided that I wanted a home office, obviously, so that is why we optioned it like that. Now, with most ground up builds, they're going to have several different structural options. And that doesn't necessarily mean that every structural option is worth it from a return on investment or a resale standpoint. More is not always better when it comes to structural options, because some structural options aren't necessarily acceptable to a wider range of buyers. Now, an example would be, in this particular floor plan, they offer a mother-in-law suite, which is essentially like a miniature guest house, where they convert a portion of the bedrooms and bathrooms into its own suite with a living room, laundry, private bathroom, walk-in closet. But that is not necessarily one of the prevailing and most popular options at this community, which tells you the demand for that is limited. And anytime demand is limited, that's going to play into the equation of resale value. So as this is set up right now, is one of the more popular ways to do this, even though this whole section here can actually be optioned to be converted into an ensuite with a living room, little kitchenette, private bathroom, private bedroom, and a little laundry area as well. Now, I actually had some clients that are actually building right up the road from us in the same community, and they really, really wanted a ensuite. It was actually one of the main reasons that they fell in love with this floor plan, because they had use for that ensuite and that little guest suite. And in that situation, of course, it's not always about ROI, it's not always about resale, but certainly if you're asking, this is some questions that I get all the time, what are the best things or what are the best suggestions for resale? That is one of the considerations. Now, because they already picked the mint floor plan, then that is one of the most popular floor plans in this subdivision. They're already going to be benefiting from a lot of demand because they selected one of the most popular floor plans. And for them, that ensuite ended up being something that added a tremendous amount of functionality for them, which is why they chose it. I'm gonna take you back outside because the next step number 3, which is pretty critical, is you're gonna have an opportunity to select what's known as your elevation, which essentially is just the exterior look of your house. When I say exterior, it means the paint color of the stucco, whether there's gonna be any brick or stone siding, whether there's gonna be any wood siding. Oftentimes it can also change the view and look of the roof. The roof lines can change from the front. Windows can change, not necessarily the size of the windows, sometimes the size of the windows, but maybe how they're oriented or where the split in the window is, how large the panes are. And so in this case, they have, usually most builders are gonna have 4 or 5 different elevations. They can have more, they can have less. This is the mid-century modern elevation, which from a spec builder or from a production build standpoint, this is a unique elevation. You don't see a whole lot of production built homes in Southern Arizona with this type of design, which is another reason why we fell in love with it. If you look around at some of these other elevations, this is what's called their desert modern elevation. This is much more common. This, I believe, is their contemporary or ranch style elevation. Again, much more common. Great, I mean, everyone has their own style preferences. This is a very popular one, so is the desert modern. Let me turn around here. There's a mid-century modern there. They have a few that are the Spanish elevation. I believe this house being built, you probably can't really see it because of the sun. They have a Spanish elevation as well. Picking an elevation is something that plays into resale appeal. I would say it's more of a personal preference. I mean, generally, the builder is gonna do a lot of due diligence in identifying what elevations are gonna do well and which elevations are gonna appeal to the widest range of buyers. So generally speaking, a builder like Mattamy is already going to have done a lot of research in what elevations they offer, and most likely you can rest assured knowing that the elevations that are available are not going to be hideous to the point where they're going to have an adverse impact on your resale value or how the neighborhood looks. That's the hope, at least. I can speak for Mattamy and several other builders in Tucson because I know them, very familiar with them. But maybe there are some horror stories of some elevations that haven't been so great. All right, so the next phase is going to be the 4th phase, the contract phase. Now, the contract phase is where you put all of this in writing. That is the moment where pen meets paper, or more likely in today's terms, your finger meets a mouse clicker and you go ahead and click through an electronic signature. The contract is where you're going to identify and confirm which lot you're selecting, which floor plan you're selecting, which structural options you're selecting, which elevation you've selected up to that point. They're also going to have your base price plus your incentives that have been negotiated and agreed to up to that point. And yes, I've made lots of videos talking about this. Builders are negotiable. If you have not been through the new build process, or you've been through the new build process and you weren't able to negotiate or decided not to negotiate, or maybe you were advised not to negotiate, whatever the case may be, take it from me. Yes, builders are very negotiable. There is specific strategies on the timing, the location, and a lot of different other variables that culminate into the type of negotiation that can be done. But ultimately, yes, all of those incentives that were negotiated or offered are put into the contract along with the price. And that is where you officially are solidifying your decision in writing to move forward and solidify that contract. Now, oftentimes they're gonna give you a general idea of how long the build time is. I can speak from my experience with production builders in Tucson and Southern Arizona. Right now, they're between 6 and 8 months. This house from start to finish took about 6.5 months, which is fairly quick. I mean, peak of COVID when we were working heavily in new builds, in the peak of COVID. A lot of logistical issues, a lot of shutdowns, a lot of people sick. New builds of the same size in the same area were taking 13 to 15 months. So that kind of gives you some perspective, twice as long. But when you're in that contract phase, they should be able to give you some sort of a general timeline. They're gonna be very cautious not to promise and commit to a specific date or even a specific month, but they will tell you generally, within a month or two of a specific time frame. All right, now number 5 is going to be electrical options. I'm gonna take you through the house and just show you what some of these electrical options look like. Now, of course, when you buy a house, you're gonna have electricity and you're gonna have lights. So you don't have to option anything if you don't want to, but this is your chance to do it if you did. As we look at the kitchen, you can see the under cabinet lights. Those under cabinet lights were an upgrade. These above cabinet lights are an upgrade. We added some pendant lights as well, which is an upgrade. There is a J-box here in the ceiling, which is for a chandelier if we wanted to put a dining room table here. That's an upgrade. Dedicating switches to whether we want all of the under cabinet and over cabinet lights on an individual switch or not, those can be upgrades and additional charges. An extra J-box here so that we can put a chandelier in this foyer as you walk in. That is an example of an upgrade. One of the upgrades that we did that was important to us, and I don't know that it's necessarily going to contribute anything that can be quantified in resale, but we added an extra washer dryer outlet here so that we could run more than one unit, because again, we have a growing family. Kids go through a lot of clothes very quickly, I've learned, but one of the things I've learned as well is I go through a lot of clothes between the gym, work, cozy outfit at night, and if one of my girls decides to spit food on me, then that could be outfit number 4 right there. So laundry happens in droves, and having an extra washer and dryer was one of the options that we went for to try to make our life a little bit easier. Some more examples of what was added would be additional outlets on the TV wall in the living room, right? Some of them at TV height here, some of them down below for an entertainment center. I'll take you through here. Extra outlets where you might need them, where the tables are going to be on the sides of the bed. Some extra outlets there. We added all of these J boxes above the sinks, so you could have an extra wall sconce or vanity light above each vanity. So those are all examples of additional electrical upgrades and options that you can choose after you go into contract. Every builder's a little bit different. Mattamy does it after you write the contract. That has been my experience with other builders as well, but I'm sure there are different builders that might have a slightly different process, whether you do it at contract, maybe you do it at the design center, but either way, it is another critical step. And really the allure to building from the ground up is for someone who has a vision of what they want, and they want to try as hard as possible not to settle for something that is makeshift of what they really wanted. And so because of that, I think people who are watching this video and would appreciate this video are people who are considering this process because they know what they want, and they're trying to get as much of what they want out of their next home as possible. When it comes to electrical, that's where you really want to have a vision of what is your plan for the future. Here's an example that I'll give you. Our plan for this vanity in the future is to turn this into a little walk-in butler's pantry. So we'll ditch and delete all of that. We added electrical here. We added outlets because we wanted them at the same heights as these outlets here. so that we could build them into the same spot, have a countertop that wraps around there, maybe upper cabinets, and then have those outlets above or below those cabinets. So that when we build that out, we're not also having to rerun electrical, because it's about $150 per outlet now, versus doing it after the fact. It probably would be double, triple, maybe even close, maybe even more than that. Because you're along for the ride, and because this is my own future personal home, I'm gonna let you in on some insider secrets. I promised I was gonna show you the good and the bad and the ugly, what I would change. This is the office, and this is a space that I spent a lot of time thinking about, right? Because this is gonna be a space where I spend a lot of time. And this floor outlet was something that I added. It was an electrical option because I'm gonna put my desk here with it facing that. So I'm actually sat behind my desk right now. And I didn't want a cord running from the wall to my desk where I had to walk over if I had an option to add a floor outlet. So this would be by the foot of my desk, and I could run power straight from there. Now you might be thinking, wow, Rich, that's really smart. You're really on top of it. Yeah, I know, right? Also in that room, let me show you what else I decided to do, which may not be as impressive. When this was just an opening before the doors were here, I was looking at the opening for the doors, and I knew it was a double door, French doors. And I was thinking, man, when I open this door, which isn't here yet, they originally had the outlet, or they originally had all the switches for this room here. And I thought to myself, before this door was here, mind you, it was just an opening with no doors. I was thinking, wow, that door probably is gonna cover up that switch. And then every time I walk in, I'm gonna have to move the door, and I'm gonna have to flip the switch like this and then move the door back. So in my infinite wisdom, I thought, well, what a great idea. Now that I know that that's gonna be an issue, I'll move it over here. So that's what I did. And then, to my surprise, when they installed the doors, I walked in this room thinking, wow, I'm glad I moved that light switch, because had it been right here, it would have been in the perfect place. So yeah, I did that. Not very smart, not my brightest moment. What's done is done. Now I've got a light switch over here instead of a perfect location, which would have been right where the builder had it. And all I simply had to do was, instead of just doing guesswork on how wide the doors were gonna be and if there was actually gonna be a conflict, I could have measured halfway and verified immediately that I didn't need to screw around with moving that. So now you have a story. I'm telling you, I'm peeling back the curtain so you don't have to make the same mistakes. But now you have an idea of the changes that you can make, even sometimes to your detriment. Now, once you're done with your electrical options, you are gonna have more electrical options. Now, the electrical options that you're gonna choose from here are gonna be called low voltage options. Those are gonna be your security systems, your cameras, any additional low voltage like Cat 5, Cat 6, dedicated hardwired cables going through the house, your Ethernet cables, coax. You're gonna have a smart panel that's already installed in your laundry room. Most new builds will have this. This is your low voltage panel or smart panel. They'll run all of the Ethernet and all of the coax and all of the Cat 5, 6, 7, whatever you chose. And this panel collects it all. So that you can put your router in here, you can put security system, camera, hardware, all of that sort of stuff in there. And the other thing that you can choose as part of your low voltage with specific builders, depends on the location, depends on the builder. You've got in-ceiling speakers here for surround sound. You've got, oftentimes those options that they offer them there, they sometimes will offer them on the patio as well. So we did opt for, carrying the vibe outside as well when we're bumping Blippy or, Snow White music, or what else do the kids listen to? Bluey music, Spidey and Friends, that's a big thing right now. If any of you have kids, you're probably laughing because you know exactly what I'm talking about. If you don't have kids or your kids are grown up, you can empathize, because at one point you were listening to the same thing. Gotta have the music on lockdown. Low voltage stuff can also be these wall pass-throughs, so that you can pass cords up and down in the interior of the wall for DVD players or, PlayStation or anything like that. So all of that is part of your low voltage. Now, something that's cool that they offered at this community that my wife was very, very excited about and we opted for was the central vacuum. This is a vacuum that is integrated through the entire house, and it's got these hoses that you can pull right out of the wall with a switch to turn the vacuum on right here when it's fired up and ready. There's attachments that go on there, and instead of lugging around a vacuum, you've got these ports throughout the house to be able to grab a port and be able to start vacuuming the house straight from there. Now, before we jump into number 7, for those of you that may not know, I've worked professionally both as a real estate agent and a real estate appraiser for over 15 years. And in that time, I've helped a couple thousand people like you buy or sell a home in Tucson. So if you're looking to make a move in the next day or even the next year, let's get connected. You can grab my contact information out of the description below. I'll put it on screen for convenience right here. You can call, text, email, or even schedule a free Zoom consult. We can meet face-to-face, get acquainted. I can understand your situation more and bring some resources to the table to help you. So next, one of the most exciting steps, number 7, which is gonna be the design center appointment. Now, the design center appointment for every builder looks a little bit different, but most of the time they're gonna have a showroom that you're gonna end up spending most of the day. They'll give you a certain amount of time that they reserve for you to spend there looking at their tile selections, countertop selections, cabinet selections, lighting fixture selections, you name it. And at that appointment, you really get to get a sense of what your home is going to look like. You're working with one of their designers and they're helping make suggestions on what type of finishes they have that would most closely mimic what you're going for. Now, it definitely helps to go to your design center appointment with an idea of aesthetics and what aesthetics you like. Getting inspo from, Pinterest, any Google images, anything you've seen in a magazine, document all of that, because when it comes to the design center, whatever you have to share with your designer, it's gonna be super helpful for them to help save time and make it a hell of a lot easier when you go through that process. Because man, it can be overwhelming if you are going in with a complete blank slate of what you want. But here's a look at some of the finishes that we chose. If I remember correctly, this color cabinetry was one of their base colors. So nothing super fancy, but it fit exactly what we were looking for. We also selected things at the design center like soft close hinges, which is not standard, so that was an upgrade. These black hardware handles, upgrading to a gourmet kitchen, which would be a cooktop instead of a slide-in range. The 42-inch upper cabinets, the molding around the exterior, around the top. The type of countertops that we chose. The apron stainless steel sink, KitchenAid appliances versus the standard Whirlpool. Those are examples of design center options. Doing these glass insert cabinets versus a standard shaker style door cabinet like that. There's also going to be backlighting in there. We mentioned the low voltage. The low voltage is something that we talked about, and that is an example of what happens in low voltage. I'll take you into the primary bathroom. So tile orientation is also part of your selection at the design center. So the way these tiles are oriented, this herringbone design, as you can see, this was our design that we picked, this herringbone design. And so we selected the tile. They had examples of it in this orientation. We decided that we really liked it. And so at the design center, we chose that. Same thing with the countertops in the bathrooms. So we got to select the countertops that we liked out of the ones that they had available. And again, this is the production style process. This is different than the process for a custom home. Custom home would be if you see a finish, if you see a tile or a countertop that you like anywhere, if you can buy it, they can install it. Production builder, different. Whatever they have is what you can use and what you can choose from. So there's pros and cons to both. The convenience and peace of mind of knowing that you've got help. You're not going to get as much decision fatigue because you're not overwhelmed as much with options. I'll take you through the other bathrooms real quick so that you can see that. But that is kind of the trade-off, is going through a custom home build. I mean, literally every finish you have ever seen on the internet is available. And sometimes that can be great. Sometimes that can be a major pain because it's like, what do I do? But everything from the way these tiles are oriented, whether you want them horizontal, whether you want them vertical, how wide you want this deco strip, whether you want this tile in the niche or whether you want this tile in the niche, whether you want to do the same tile on the floor or a different tile, whether you want to do this colored grout or maybe something darker, maybe something lighter. Those are all examples of things that you'll be able to choose when you go to your design center appointment. Kitchens and bathrooms are where the design center appointment really shines. This is our other bathroom. We personally went with something much more neutral in this bathroom because this is our kids' bath. And so we anticipate that right next to this beautiful tile work is going to be a bright pink shower curtain with a unicorn shooting rainbows out of its nose. And we just figured, why not go a little bit more neutral with the tile here, because whatever the girls are into that week is likely to be hanging here. And well, we'll try to not conflict with too much going on in that bathroom. So that was our game plan. So design center covers a lot of kitchens and bathrooms, as you can see. And it's really an exciting time for you to kind of see all of what's been in your mind come to life. Now, coming up very soon, I'm going to share with you one thing that happened mid-builds that almost had my wife and I walk away from this build entirely. So stay tuned because I'm going to share that with you. And at number 8, the important step at number 8 is going to be your pre-construction meeting, your breaking ground meeting. Now that is before your slab is even there. Most of the time, maybe they might be starting some of the in-ground infrastructure, but you're going to be pretty much still looking at a barren lot with nothing on it. But that's where your super is going to walk the lot with you, answer any questions about, hey, how big is my backyard going to be? You know, where is it going to be oriented? How big are my side yards going to be? That sort of thing. They're gonna just walk it with you, ensure that they know where the in-ground plumbing is going to be, how many bathrooms there were, if you optioned any additional bathrooms, any additional sinks, anything that needs to be in the ground before they form it up and start to pour the concrete. So from there, the next step is going to be the framing walkthrough. Before all this drywall is done, before any electrical is on, this is just going to be nothing but 2x4s. You might even have some trusses up, but that is going to be your opportunity to walk through the house. And this is really an exciting phase because it starts to look like a structure. it starts to look like a house. And for those of you who like to watch things be built, especially when it's just something that lives in your imagination until you get to see it in person, if you're not as visual of a person, this is where it really starts to get exciting, because you get to see it. You get to stand in your bedroom, you get to stand in your living room, and it really starts to feel like it's making progress. And so it's a really fun step to get to the framing walkthrough phase. And you get to walk through with the super. Oftentimes, if you are living in town, definitely one of those pivotal, critical meetings that we suggest that you attend in person, if at all possible. If not, it's very common that myself or one of my business partners will be at our meeting with our clients, either having them on FaceTime so they can be part of the conversation as we walk through the home and check the progress and ensure that all of those options that they selected are being accounted for. Now from here, there's gonna be a little bit of time that goes by, say maybe a month or two, and the next meeting is going to be your pre-drywall meeting. Now, this is really when it's recommended that you have a home inspector that specializes in new builds attend that meeting with you. If you need a home inspector that specializes in new builds, drop me a line. You can grab my email, grab my contact information out of the description below. I'll put it on screen right here. Feel free to reach out. You can call, text, email, whatever is most convenient. I'm happy to share that information with you so that you can have a very solid inspector that specializes in new builds, because they should be at that appointment with you so that they can check the HVAC ducting install. They can check where the electrical components are. They can check where all the brackets are that connect the trusses. They can check all of the rough-in electrical, all the rough-in plumbing, and really get a look at what's behind the walls. And this is very different than what they get to do in a resale home, because in a resale home, it looks much like this. They can't see behind the walls. So if you can if you can have an inspection at this opportune time, it allows them to see things that they wouldn't otherwise have a chance to see, and ultimately catch things that they wouldn't otherwise have an opportunity to catch. Now, for you as the buyer, this is gonna be a really important time for you to walk alongside your super, and I suggest having a list of the options that you selected, having a printout of your electrical plan, having a printout of your plumbing plan, even your mechanical plan, so that you can go through the house and make sure your hose bibs that you selected or added on were there. Even the standard ones are there. Standard outlets, standard electrical components, standard light fixtures, as well as any optioned things as well, because not only have I seen them miss things that were upgraded and that were added on, I've had them miss things that were just standard. Part of the plan should have been there to begin with. I've even had them add things in that weren't on either. They weren't on the standard plan and they weren't as an upgrade. And in those cases, I mean, I can speak even from this house, there's 2 outlets that they added to our garage, not supposed to be there, either on the standard plan, wasn't an upgrade that we did either. Did I ask them to change it? No. Electrical outlets, cool, let's do it, right? But those are examples of seeing things that can happen even though they're not accounted for anywhere. All right, and we are now approaching the final stages. Stage 11, the 11th phase, is gonna be your blue tape walk. Now, we are actually only a couple days away, about a week away from doing our blue tape walk. And as you can see, this blue tape has already been put up by the super. The blue tape indicates some fix that needs to be done. It could be a drywall fix. You can see there's scratches here. There's holes in the drywall there. There's a hole in the drywall here. Paint issues, chips, gouges. All of that needs to be repaired. So blue tape, anywhere that you see it, means something. It's an easy way for the construction superintendent to go through and note for all the drywallers, painters, electricians, tilers, anybody to come through and understand, okay, this needs to be fixed and this needs to be fixed. My wife and I as buyers have not gone through and taped up this house yet on our blue tape walk. All of the tape that is here is done from the superintendent to try and limit how much tape we then need to put down when we have our blue tape walkthrough. Those blue tape walkthroughs can be really critical. One of the final chances that you have to indicate what corrections you would like to have prior to closing on your brand new build. And it really is a personal preference. There's no rule book that says you have to put tape this and you have to correct this. There are some people that really, they walk in through the house and they absolutely love it. They don't see anything wrong. And then there's other people who they will point out the tiniest little mark and want it fixed. Now, it doesn't matter where you're at on that spectrum. I have personally worked with all of them, and I get it. It's a big purchase. It's the house you've been waiting to live in for 7 months as you watched it be built from nothing. And so whatever your preference is, that is going to be where you're given a roll of blue tape, and you can tape up anything you want. And that will be an indication for the construction crew to come in and correct it for you. So that is a fun meeting just to get a final glimpse at the house as we start to see stuff like this. This is actually not damage. It's just like glue, I think, from when they did the carpet. Here's some paint issues here. So these are just examples of like stuff that you'll see. They're gonna have to come back and scrape that, sand it. Very common stuff. There's blue tape everywhere. Blue tape everywhere. So when you go through this blue tape walk, it is another opportunity for you to check your electrical plan, check your low voltage plan, ensure that all of that is there. Check the options and structural options to make sure that you didn't miss anything that you opted for. Bring anything to the superintendent's attention that you've been considering. I also suggest note taking. As soon as you think of something in your head, you're like, oh, I gotta remember to mention that. I started a list and just create a list with a date. And then every time I talk to the superintendent, I make sure that I give him that list so that I know it's off my list and on his list. That's a little trick that I've used, because week to week, a new list of items comes up. And finally, guys, the 12th and final step is the final walkthrough. This is the second and final time that I suggest you have a home inspector come with you to the house. Now, your real estate agents, like we accompany all of our clients to their final walkthrough as well. Each of these critical phases, the in-person meetings at the construction site, are really critical for you as a buyer to be present with the superintendent. And oftentimes we as real estate professionals prefer to be there as well, as to be an extra set of eyes and ears, ask questions, maybe even sort things out, provide some additional experience and perspective as we go through that process together as well. As I mentioned, this is the second and final time for the home inspector to walk through the entire house, test all of the outlets, check the foundation, look at how the flooring was installed, look if there's any cracks in any of the stucco around windows, if there's any broken windows, everything is operating correctly. All the light switches do what they're supposed to do. The air conditioner is functioning and testing positives on all of the splits. Thermostats are operating, appliances are operating. If there's any code violations that might have been unnoticed, anything like that, the home inspector is then going to be able to complete what would be considered their normal inspection if you were to compare it to, say, a resale home. Now, this is also going to be an opportunity for you and your superintendent to check the list of items that you put blue tape on during your blue tape walk, because when you did your blue tape walk, the superintendent created a list of all of the big significant items that needed to be corrected prior to the final walkthrough. So part of your final walkthrough is going to be walking through the house, verifying that all the things you put tape on are corrected, and the list of items that the superintendent noted is also corrected. This is really your final attempt to Ensure that everything about the house is to your satisfaction prior to closing. Now, that's not to say that if there are some outstanding things or things that come up after closing that you're just SOL, because you're not. That's one of the big benefits of buying a new build is you have lots of warranties. The most comprehensive warranty is typically offered in the first 12 months. Kind of think of it as a bumper to bumper. Anything that can go wrong, is most likely covered by the builder, from even move-in bumps and dings on the drywall. Oftentimes the builder at that 1 year, if you noted it to them, they will come in and fix all of those for you. Now, also part of this final walkthrough, they're going to give you kind of an orientation to your home. They're going to walk you around the whole exterior and the whole interior. They're going to show you about all of the different mechanical components, how often you should be servicing all of your mechanical components, who to call and what to do if something were to not be operating correctly. They're going to talk about all of the warranties that each of the components have, how to register those warranties, how to file a claim through one of those warranties. They're going to really take a comprehensive approach to familiarize you with the home that you bought and how to make sure that it is well maintained long into the future. Now, in a second, I'm going to share with you the one thing that went wrong right in the middle of our new build that almost caused us to completely walk away and ditch it altogether. But first, I just wanted to remind you that if you are looking to buy a new build in Tucson, Dove Mountain, or anywhere in Southern Arizona, and you're looking for an expert to navigate that process with you, feel free to reach out, grab my contact information out of the description below. I'll put it on screen here for convenience so that we can get connected. Give me a call, text, email, or even schedule a free Zoom consult. You can schedule it right from my calendar and we can meet face-to-face to get acquainted, and I can help you go through this whole process from start to finish. Now, the moment you've been waiting for, you really wanted to hear exactly what happened. Well, I have been working in new construction long enough to know that there is almost a guarantee that something is going to go wrong. Mistakes are going to be had. I get that. And as a buyer myself, it is something that it's not comforting, but it is part of the process. So I'm not as scared about it. There is one component in particular of the build that I understand to be the most critical in terms of mistakes, and that is the foundation. And so there was an issue with the foundation when this was poured, and it was, the one thing that I was like in my mind, man, I really, as long as there's no issues with the foundation, right, then that's my number one concern. Well, when they poured this foundation, they formed up, they put all of their wooden forms up to form the foundation, and they accidentally, the concrete guys, they formed up the wrong entryway patio. The original entryway that they formed out actually came here and cut over here. And the reason why is because it was for a different elevation. They accidentally formed up the wrong entry patio for the wrong elevation. This is a mid-century modern elevation, which gets this patio. It doesn't get the longer extended patio. What they had done is they put the patio that generally is supposed to go or usually goes on the contemporary elevation, not the mid-century modern elevation. Now, you might be thinking, well, what's the big deal? You can just move it, right? Well, it's concrete. The other challenge is that this is a post-tension slab, which means they are high-tension steel cables running in a crisscross pattern throughout this entire slab, and all of it's under tension. So it was a big issue because their original attempt to correct it and fix it was, I've been working in this industry long enough to know that it was not going to be done correctly. And I don't think it was a reflection on the builder so much as it was probably a reflection on the subcontractor. But ultimately, I took pictures, I documented everything, and I was suspicious that the correction, that the direction that they were going to try to correct this wasn't the correct way. But I waited until a certain point when I was 100% sure that they were going to try to correct this in a way that was not going to be acceptable. They had essentially just saw cut off the whole front 2 foot of this. And from what I could tell, they were going to cut the steel cables off without putting them back into the concrete, and they were just going to patch the holes as if nothing happened. And they weren't going to retension the cables, which would have completely sacrificed and compromised the whole integrity of this post-tension slab. And that for that reason, I was at a point where I was talking and discussing this with my wife, and I was like, listen, if they don't correct this, we can't move forward. And she was in agreement. Ultimately, Mattamy, the builder, stood behind their product. I brought it up to them. They ended up getting the superintendent that we had been working with, who's been great. He happened to be out of town, and so he wasn't aware that this was going on. It was this whole extenuated circumstance thing. But it is an example of things that can go wrong, and I'm going to share with you the tip that will help protect you through this whole process in just a minute. But ultimately, they ended up getting a certified engineering company to come out, take a look at it, certify exactly what needed to be done in order for it to pass the engineering certification. The concrete company and subcontractor came back out, corrected everything according to plan. The engineering company came back out, verified visually with photos, and then provided a report to us showing us that it was in fact corrected to their approval. And ultimately it was water under the bridge from that point. But you know, it is kind of a thought that I have, like, what if I hadn't seen that, right? Would the super, I'd like to think that the super would have caught it. And knowing him, I'm sure that there's a good chance that he would have. But you know, the fact that I find it first, it's one of those examples as to why I think being present at your new build as much as possible is the #1 secret to you having a smooth new build process and ultimately having a very quality build. And that is the insider secret. Your superintendent that you're going to be working alongside through your build process, that 6 to 8 months, hopefully you get someone who you work really well with. And I would recommend that you work hard right out of the gate to align yourselves with them. Don't create an enemy out of your superintendent, because that's going to be the one person that really you need to have your back. For our superintendent, the first time meeting him, we gave them, you know, luckily my wife bakes homemade sourdough bread. And so he got a fresh baked loaf of sourdough bread and some olive oil from a local olive oil company here in town called Alfonso's. And so that was kind of a gift and a gesture that we gave to start our relationship off on the right path. The other thing that's really, really critical is as present as you can be during the build process, the better. If you can stop by weekly, I recommend it. I mean, if you ask my wife, I'm probably over at this house an excessive amount of times in comparison to how often she would like to be here. But the reason why is because I understand that the more time I can spend here and the more eyes I can put on it, the more opportunity I have to find the issues, bring them to the superintendent's attention, which he catches 80 to 90% of them. But there's 10% or 15% of them that he doesn't. And those are the ones that I bring up. And so it's us working together. More eyes. You know, I have a very invested interest in this house. You as a future homeowner of the house that's being built also have a vested interest in the outcome and ultimately what the house looks like and the condition that it's in. So no one is going to care as much as you. And because of that, I always recommend having as much eyes on it as possible. It's part of the reason that for the clients that we're working with through this new build process, we are checking in on their houses weekly. It's between the sales agents that work for the builders, us as the real estate agents, being in communication with the superintendents. We have eyeballs on it often, constantly. And because of that, that is the #1 secret to smoothing out your new build process and ensuring that what you put on paper and put in a contract is ultimately what's delivered to you at the end of the day. Well, there you go, guys. The sun is setting here in Dove Mountain. I hope you enjoyed this personal tour of our future home. as well as a detailed breakdown of the 12 most critical steps of building your brand new build from start to finish. Hit that thumbs up button if you find value out of this video and you found it entertaining. If there's any additional questions that I didn't answer that you're curious about, drop a comment below. I personally review and respond to all of those comments, and I love doing that. So engage with me there. And thank you so much for watching. Until next time, I hope to see you around the neighborhood.